Hi everyone, my name is Phil and welcome to Phil Does 3D. I'm a multimedia and 3D artist and I stream on Twitch weekdays from 5 PM Pacific time in the US, 11 AM in Australia and 12 AM in the UK. Now for any of you guys getting a bit confused as why I'm an hour earlier if you're not in the United States, it's because the US has now gone into daylight savings in Pacific time, so I always stream at 5 PM Pacific time in the US. That never changes, which will mean that it's been pushed back an hour earlier if you're in the UK and an hour earlier if you're in Australia or anywhere else in the world for that matter if you're not in the US. That will change again at the end of March. For you guys just in the UK, it will be pushed back to 1 AM like it used to be because you start daylight savings. It'll change again in Australia when we finish daylight savings and it'll go back to 10 AM. But just to be clear, if you're in the United States, it's always 5 PM Pacific time, regardless of whether it's daylight saving or not, because I work on daylight saving time US. So it'll always be 5 PM for you guys in the US. Just if you're anywhere else in the world, it'll vary a little bit depending on when you start and finish daylight savings there. So just to clear all that up. For anyone new to my channel and what we're doing, we're working on an Art Deco building interior and exterior. I created this building 6 years ago in UDK. I'll just quickly run the video here. Now, like I said, we're going to be recreating this building in Unreal Engine 4.15. But I'll run the video that I made of the building when I made it back in 2011 in UDK. It's just some concept art at the beginning. We're going to be recreating this building using the new Unreal Engine because I'm interested to see what the lighting changes and things have been done since UDK version. So, because remember UDK was version 3 of Unreal and now they're up to version 4.15. So again, this is the old version that was created 6 years ago that we're going to be recreating now. And what we're doing at the moment is we're working on the assets in 3D Studio Max. I'm just updating them for the new engine. I'm retexturing some assets before I take everything into Unreal and start rebuilding the level in Unreal. So again, this was UDK 6 years ago, but this is the building and the interior we're going to be recreating now in Unreal version 4.15. I'll just let that play through for a little bit. Remember guys, if you've got any questions or anything you don't understand, please feel free to pop into chat and ask me. Doesn't have to be about Unreal or 3D Studio Max, which is the 3D program I use. It can be anything regarding 3D. I work in architectural visualization now for a studio. I've worked in games development in the past for a couple of game studios. I've been using 3D for more than 10 years now. I've been working in 3D for more than 10 years now. So if you have a question or something you're not sure about, please feel free to pop into chat and ask me. If you just want to pop in and say hello, that's cool. If you just want to watch, that's completely fine as well. Anyway, we might leave it there and jump into Max, I think. So these are the this is the building and these are the assets we're going to be recreating to bring into the new Unreal Engine. And I just lay them all out like this because it helps me to see what assets I need to make for the building. That way I won't forget anything. Like I said, I've worked in games development and this is generally the way games designers will work. They'll lay all their assets out before they start building whatever they're doing in the engine that they're using. So, and last week we were working on this piece of geometry here. I didn't like the original texture, so I took it into Substance Painter and changed the texture, repainted the texture on it. And again guys, sorry for the no stream on Wednesday last week. Twitch was having problems with streams going live, so I thought it was best to not do that stream and wait till the Monday and start streaming again fresh then. So again, for anyone new to the channel, I stream on Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday at 5 p.m. Pacific time in the US. So that was the asset that we took into Substance Painter and I was working on last week. What I've done is I've taken that into the Unreal Engine here. So we have this is that arch ceiling piece that you saw in the fly through that goes between the two wall sections on the upper level mostly. I just retextured that up in Substance Painter. Added a bit of wearing on the sides here for where, you know, some of the wood has been knocked off. It's just aged a little bit. So that's what we were working on last week, and that's the asset that we created. So today we're going to be working on a new asset. And what I'm doing is as I work on the assets in Unreal, update them, I'm just bringing them into the Unreal Engine. That way, by the time we get to the end of that row, we should have all of our pieces ready to start rebuilding the building in Unreal. These are just air ducts that go on the side of the building. I created 3 versions: a cleaner version, a mid version, which is slightly more rusted up, and then a worn version. And then we also created one of the wall sconces, the Art Deco lights that sit on the wall. That just uses an emissive map. So today we're going to be working on a new asset. So we'll jump back into Unreal. And let's decide on what we want to work on today. Let's see. Let's have a look at this wall section, I think. Now again, I'm just going to isolate this in max. This makes it easier for me to work on. Now I like the texture on this, but I don't like the fact that it's just sitting on a flat plane. I did it that way back in 2011 because graphics cards weren't as powerful, didn't have as much memory. But the engine's gotten a lot more powerful, graphics cards have gotten a lot more powerful, and the engine can handle a lot more polys now. So I think what we'll do is we will just add a bit more geometry to this wall decoration, this wall panel. Now again, you could use a normal map, and a normal map will give you a fake 3D geometry look. But if you're looking at the wall panel side on, which you probably will be as it flies through that building when we create the cinematic in Unreal, you're going to see that that's nothing but a flat plane, and I don't want that. So I'm going to actually add geometry to the plane object itself. So let's have a look here. Let's jump into our front viewport, I think. Let's add some geometry to that piece here in the that border in the middle to begin with, I think. So I might just grab my box object. It's going to pull in a bit here so I can get a good look at that centerpiece. It's going to pull back out using my magnifier here, so I can center it up properly. And again, you'll see I move my mouse around to hit buttons. I don't use macros. Now, I do use macros when I'm working on my own and not streaming. I don't do it while I'm streaming because I don't want to be doing things that you guys don't know what it's all about. Because part of the reason I stream on Twitch is not only to work on my own stuff, but to encourage you guys to do 3D and to help you with doing 3D. And if you can't see what I'm doing, if I'm using macros to do all of my work, you're more likely to get confused as to what's going on. So I will be moving my mouse around the screen quite a bit to hit buttons, so you see exactly what I'm doing when I'm working in Max. Let's create a box here. Let's work with the outer edge of this border, I think. Okay. I'm just going to put edge faces on here as well so I can see exactly what's going on. And I'm going to pull that box forward because it's sitting way behind the object at the moment. So I'm just going to move it forward so it sits in front of that this panel. I'm going to move it in a little bit so it's sitting just on the top of the edge of the panel there. Decide how high I want that to be, and we may pull it back just a little bit, I think. So I'll go into my modify tab. Just pull back on the height a little bit. Because remember too, when these panels are sitting in the wall or on the wall, you're not going to see the depth here because they're all going to be sitting square to each other. So the depth there is less important than the depth here, and the depth here is what's going to give us that more three-dimensional look to the panel. So I maybe just a little bit, pull it back just a little bit more, something like that. And now we can see it in front of our object here. Let's see, let's up our length segments a little bit. And our width segments. Hey Sniper Echo, good to see you. I wasn't sure if you would remember that I was starting a bit earlier this time. I know I was going to keep reminding you guys last week, but I couldn't stream on Wednesday because of all the problems Twitch were having with going live. So yeah, it's good to see you. We're just going to be working on our panel here. And just for your benefit, Sniper Echo, I'll show you that asset we were working on last week in Substance that I imported into the Unreal Engine. Remember that piece of this arch that I hated the texture on? Oh, that's cool. I'm glad to see you. It's alright that you're late. Like I said, that's fine. You're here, that's good. And you've been working in Vue. Well, that's good to hear, because like I said, guys, I want you to I encourage you to do 3D. That's why I'm on Twitch, and it's good to hear that you're working with Vue, Sniper Echo. It's a great program. Anyone that's not familiar with it, it's made by a company called Eon Software. It's a 3D environment program. So when I first started streaming, I showed you guys that. I was working in that with that Burek Garden Terrace that I created. Thanks, Sniper Echo. Yeah, the texturing now is a lot better than it was initially. That's for sure. And like I said, all I did was I added a little bit of wearing on the edges of some of these pieces of the geometry, just to make it look like it's been a bit worn. And we just added a bit more interest to the model by putting some different coloured chocolate brown wood paneling around the outside. Because if you remember, this model originally was just all one textured yellow wood horrible thing. So I thought just by breaking it up a bit more, we'll give it a bit more interest when we do when we build our Art Deco building back in Unreal Engine 4.15. It'll just help to make it look a bit more interesting. So that's what we were working on last week. And I think today we're going to be working on this wooden panel. I just want to add a bit more three-dimensionality to it. It's just looking a bit flat. And like I was saying, we could get away with using a normal map on it, and we probably will use a normal map anyway. But with a normal map, you're not going to, when you look at it side on, it's still going to stay completely flat. Because the normal map really only fakes geometry, it doesn't create it. And when we do the fly-through of the new Art Deco building in Unreal, when we create that cinematic, we are going to be seeing these panels from a side-on perspective. So I want to give them a bit more depth, a bit more three-dimensionality. So that's what we're going to be doing now, I think. We worked on the Art Deco light a few weeks ago. Last week it was that wooden arch. So to vary it up a bit more, we'll work on this wooden panel. I'm just going to work out what I'm doing here. All right. I'm just going to throw an edit poly on top of this. I'm going to loop my selection. I want to move that up. What I'm actually going to do too is I'm going to make my object here see-through so I can look at the texture underneath of it a bit more clearly. I'm just going to pull that up until it's about in the right position for that border that we're creating. Should be about, it's still a little difficult to see, but I think it's about here. I'm going to turn edge faces off really quickly. Yeah, about there looks good. Let's loop our selection and do the one at the bottom. I know it's hard to see because the panel behind it is showing up as well, but as long as we're careful, we should be okay. And pull that one down a bit. Let's do the ones on the side now. Move that over. Now I think what I might do here is select my original panel, and I might freeze it. That way I won't accidentally select it and move it, even though it's not a big deal. But because I'm trying to create geometry for on top of it, I don't want to accidentally select it and move it. So this way I can't select it. This prevents me from accidentally choosing it. Just let me unfreeze everything for a minute. I'm losing my texture. Alright. We've got our box here and it's sitting on top of our original panel. I think this one actually needs to come up a little bit. I'm just going to move that edge loop up a little. Alright. I'm going to turn off, oh actually no I won't. What I'll do is I'll move my panel here off of the object. I'm going to remove the inside pieces here. I'll jump into my 3D viewport. And I just also now I'm going to turn off see-through so I can have a better look at the actual model itself. I'm just bridging those two so that we seal up the mesh. Okay. Let's do a little bit of edge softening on this piece, I think. I think I'll do it in 2 stages. I was going to do both the front and the back at the same time, but it might be better for us to do it piece by piece. That way we won't get any unexpected results in Max. I've selected my edges. I'm not going to use the chamfer in the edit poly here because I always like to use the new one that Autodesk created here, which is a separate modifier. It's a newer version of the chamfer than the one you get in edit poly. So if you're working in 3D Studio Max and you're doing a chamfer and edge, I suggest you use the modifier, the separate modifier, and not use the one in the edit poly because it's newer. It'll give you a better result. I'm going to up my segments here to maybe 3. Now I'm just going to reduce the tension a little bit to get more of a curve on that edge. Increase it a bit more as well. You have to be careful I don't go too far because we've got to do the same on... Actually, we don't have to do the same on the inner edge because that's going to be sitting flush against the panel, so we can concentrate just on this outer edge here. So I can pull that up quite a bit. Let's go to... what are we at? Let's go to 4.5. Okay. I'm just going to collapse my stack now. And I'm going to select the outer edge of the plane. And this one's in more sections because we had those edge loops in. So there's 3 sections to the outer edge as opposed to 1 on the inner edge. Okay, again let's throw down our chamfer modifier. Let's see this again, we're going to go to 3 segments. I'm not pulling my segments up too high because I don't want to add too much geometry to this mesh. Even though I want to go higher poly with the new engine, there's no point in going overboard with it. I'm going to again pull back on my tension here to about 0.5. Just over 0.5. I'm going to pull up my amount. I'm just going to pull back again to have a look at the model overall. Might go to 5.5 on this one. Okay, again I'm going to collapse my stack. And jump back into my front viewport and pull that back over the top of the original mesh. I'm going to turn edge faces off so it's easier for me to see. And I'm just comparing to make sure that they do line up correctly. It looks like this one here at the top should be pulled down a little. So before I start UVing, I'm going to go into vertex mode here and just select all the ones in the middle and pull it down. And just like that. For Volt 87, hello, good to see you. Thanks for popping into chat. Remember guys, like I said, if there's anything you're not sure about, please feel free to ask me in chat. It doesn't have to be about what I'm working on, it can be about anything regarding 3D. I'm just going to jump back into my orthographic here and have a look. You're working on a match project while watching me? Cool. That's good to hear. I like you guys that are good to do 3D work. That's why I'm on Twitch. I want to encourage you guys to do 3D, so it's good to hear people working in View and Sniper Echo's case and Max in your case. And again, like I said, I work with 3D Studio Max, and I have all for more than a decade now. But I'm not by any means suggesting that's the only 3D program to use or the best. There are plenty of good 3D programs around. Blender's very good and it's completely free. So I encourage you guys that are interested in 3D to check out Blender if you just want to play around, because it's fun. It's fun to do 3D. So you guys should do it. So you're working on anything in particular for Vault? And remember, guys, too, if you want to show me any of your work, that's quite cool too. But do remember, don't post a link in chat until you tell me, because otherwise Nightbot will time you out. I have to add you to the regulars list before you can post a link, but I'm quite happy to look at anyone's work as well. Let me see here. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to apply that texture before I do anything else to this mesh. So I'm just going to go into my material editor and find that texture we're using for that panel. It's going to be here somewhere. Might be easier for me to actually select it. There we go. I'm going to assign that to this piece of geometry as well. I'm going to throw an unwrap UVW down. Vault says, yeah, he's working on his first animation project for class. Cool. I'm currently designing a World War I themed robot. That sounds really cool, actually. Yeah, very cool. A World War I themed robot. Yeah, that does sound very cool. Robots are always a really fun thing to make too. And a class project, okay, cool. Just going to make sure I select my texture here in the background so I can see what I'm working with. And I'm going to select all of my UVs. I'm going to scale them down. Because remember, at this stage, you're only working with the top part of this texture. I'm going to scale it up until I get the right height, and then I'll look at the width. Vault says, yeah, I'm learning a lot. I've only been using Max for about 2 months. Okay. Well, Max can be intimidating at first because there's a lot of buttons and a lot of sub menus and all that type of thing to work with. As long as you take your time and do it gradually, it doesn't take too long to get used to what everything does. But good on you for using Max or straight out of the gate like that. It is used a lot in architectural visualization, which is a field I work in. Usually, like I said, I've worked in games development before as well, but it's used quite a bit in ArchViz. Max is used in games development too, but Maya is used quite a bit for animation. If you're doing games animation, that is. But Max does have its cat animation system and all that type of thing, so you know you can get some really good animation out of Max as well. Let me see here. I'll close that down for a minute and turn off my UVs. I want to see what's going on here. I don't have a poly there. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to select or deselect bits of this model, or bits of the UV I should say. I don't know, through another UV unwrap on there. I didn't want to do that. That's what I want. Open UV editor. I'm going to turn off full object mode here, because if I don't do that, when I select any part of that UV, it's going to select all of that part of the UV here. Let me just make this a bit smaller so we can see what's going on in the viewport. So if you wanted to select individual UV shells, you'd want to turn that off, otherwise it's going to select the entire shell. Now, we will select the entire shell here because I'm not actually interested in the back, I'm more interested in the front. Again, I'm going to jump into my front viewport. Revolt's asking, what do they typically use for Pixar and Disney? That's a good question. Soft image, soft image used to be very big, but when Autodesk purchased that software, they stopped making it. They'll use all different types of 3D software. I know that they'll probably use Maya for animation work. Cinema 4D is becoming very popular now. I haven't worked for Disney or Pixar myself, so I can't say for sure, but it really depends on the designer. A lot of studios are quite happy for the designer to use whatever 3D software they're comfortable with. They don't really care what you use, so long as you get the work done. And they're big enough that they can buy licenses for whatever software people are used to using. Now, some studios will have a pipeline that they follow, so they'll create tools based specifically for Max or for Maya or that type of thing. So there can be some restrictions in that regard. Like some studios will want you to use a specific software because they've created a tool for their pipeline that they want you to use. But just as many studios are happy for you to use whatever you're familiar with. I know the game studios I worked for, we used both Max and Maya. The ArtViz studio I worked for, we used Max, but they wouldn't mind if you wanted to use Maya. In the cinema work I've done, I generally still use Max. So, yeah. But it will depend on the studio itself. But like I said, many of them are quite happy for you to use whatever you're comfortable with. They don't care as long as you get the work done. And like I said, they're big enough that they can afford to buy a license for everything, so. I'm just hitting the Alt key here to deselect these UVs on the sides. Yeah, well, like I said, most studios are pretty cool that way. They're more interested in you getting the work done. They're less interested in forcing you to use a specific piece of software. Everybody's different. Everybody's used different software, and there's so many 3D programs on the market that they do themselves a disservice if they were stopping people from using a particular piece of software. Now, there's a few ways I could do this. I could do a flatten mapping, which might be a good way to go. Let me just continue on here with deselecting these. We'll see how we go. Yeah, let's try doing a flatten mapping. It might be quicker. I'll just leave the default values here. Yeah, that was quicker. We'll do a flatten mapping. I'm just going to move these off to the side so we can organize ourselves a little better. That's the front piece that I want there. So, and I'm also going to make sure my rotation is correct here for my UVs. Just going to scale that up a bit. Yeah, and look, and I can tell that it looks like my UV shell here is rotated, so I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. Make sure I turn angle snap on so it does a proper 90-degree angle for me. Just scale it in to make sure I am correct here. Yes, and I am. Well, I'm just going to move it into place a little bit better. Now I do a non-uniform scale and max by holding down the shift key and then either scaling in the X direction or the Y direction, depending on whether I want to go higher or wider. So if you're using max, just hold the shift key down to get non-uniform scale happening. And the same with the move tool. Hold down the shift key to constrain it to the either the X or the Y direction, so it's not so fiddly to move around. Looks like it's a bit too tall. Maybe we can move it out a little bit more, perhaps. Let's have a look at that in the viewport here. Okay, that should be pretty good for what we want. Just going to turn off my seams because I don't like these green lines. They're just your map seams. I usually turn those off so I can get a better look at the actual model I'm working on. I'm just going to look at these pieces here in the inside edge. And again, they're going to be these straight pieces here. So I'm just going to make sure I can see my model and select them to see which one is which. These look like the outside edges, so these will probably be the inside edges here. Yeah, that's the top. That's the bottom. That's the top edge. That'll be the bottom edge. That'll probably be the back of the model, which we're never going to see because we're placing it directly up against the panel. And they're the two inner edges here by the look of it. So let's start with this one. I'm going to rotate it around. No, it's rotating off center because I started the rotation not directly on the model. Okay. I really don't like that circle in the actual original texture. I'm going to leave it there for the moment. What I'm probably going to end up doing is I'm going to go into max and alter this texture to get rid of that hole that's in the actual texture itself, part of the original texture. We'll ignore it for now and we'll just line up these edges here a little as best we can. So that one and this one will be the one on the opposite side. Yep. And again, let's just rotate it around. Move it into position. Like that. Let's do the same with the ones at the top. So this one here. And again, I'm just looking for a spot on the texture here that I can use that'll blend with those top edges. So it doesn't have to be right next to where that edge is. I'm gonna use this top edge up here. And you'll see that'll blend in together naturally anyway, because the color of the wood is the same. So also, don't feel you have to use the texture that's right next to where your edge is. You can use any part of the texture that's going to blend in well. This one should be the bottom edge, I think. Yep. And what I might do here is, I don't really want to have any textures overlapping in case I do want to do any painting in Mari. Because remember, if you're doing texture painting in Mari, you can't have your textures overlap, your UVs overlap I should say. Because when you paint on one part of the model, you're going to be painting on the overlap part as well. So just in case we do want to take it into Mari, and I'm not saying we will, but it's a good habit to get into anyway. I'm going to move this part of the texture right over to this edge. So I've got room to place this one next to it without overlapping the two UVs. And this way, like I said, if we do decide we do want to do any texture painting in Mari, we're not going to have a problem with painting on that edge and having it show up on that edge up there. Let's just have a look at these ones on the outer edge now as well. And there should be these two large ones here. Like I said, for anyone new that doesn't know, I usually do a lot of texture painting in Mari by the Foundry because I like to paint by hand. I'm using Substance Painter for some of these though as well, just because it's good for things like these pieces of geometry here where we just need a wooden texture, we don't need to paint particularly anything on it. So for these types of pieces of geometry, Substance Painter is ideal. But for other pieces of geometry, I want to do painting by hand. So let's rotate this around 90 degrees. And again, now we've got to choose a part of the texture that we want to place this on. We're going to have a bit of a problem because I'd like to avoid as much overlapping as possible. But we don't have a lot of room here to work with. Let's try working with the actual curved edge here to see if we can get the texture to continue along that curve all the way around to the edge. Now it may not work for this texture map, but it may. We'll see how we go. So if we scale this up, again I'm not scaling it in the width wise, only height wise. And you guys will see that there's a 3D modeling community now in Creative, which is good. I'm glad Twitch added the community. Actually, I added the community. I'm the moderator of that community, so if anyone wants to stream to it, please feel free. If you're a 3D modeler, that is. I'm the moderator for that community, but I'm glad Twitch added it as an official 3D modeling community to the communities tab under Creative. So yeah, the 3D modeling community, you're free to stream to it if you're a 3D modeler. It doesn't matter what 3D program you use. If you're doing rendering, you can stream to it. If you're doing game modeling, you can stream to it as well. That's completely cool. The rules are on the side there, so long as you're doing 3D work, then please feel free to stream to that community.